Hello and welcome to AviaDev Insight Africa, the podcast offering a window to the world of African aviation with your host, John Howell, CEO and founder of AviaDev Africa. Today, we're actually breaking some new ground and we're going to be talking about something that's a very sensitive subject, namely mental health. Now, before I start, I want to caveat this episode by saying that neither myself nor my guest are medical doctors. And if you are affected by any of the issues that are discussed today, please do seek professional assistance. Our aim today is to shine a light so that what needs to be talked about is talked about and shouldn't be a taboo anymore. So I'd like to introduce my guest, Ivana Alvarez Marshall, who is the governor of the African section of the 99s and also a pilot and a certified Reiki master. So today we're going to talk about the 99s and the mental health in pilots and also discuss some coping mechanisms. So welcome to the podcast, Ivana.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
So thanks for joining us. Let's begin with your story, because I've had the benefit of reading the biography, but it'd be great for our audience to hear about your personal aviation story.
Well, my aviation story started in Malawi when I was small. I did a round the world trip with my parents, and I always wanted to fly. That was the start from the round the world trip. We were supposed to immigrate to New Zealand, but due to circumstances, it didn't quite happen with us living there, and we came back to Africa. I'm born and raised in Malawi, and so I've been flying 23 years. And basically, I started my flying training at 43 Air School in South Africa. And that's where my journey began. And from there on, it's just been one roller coaster after the other in terms of moving countries, collecting licenses. So I have an FAA ATPL and an EASA ATPL license. And basically, I lived in the UK for 6 years where I did a lot of freelance work on the Cessna Citation Bravo, as well as worked in various roles at Retford Gamston Airport as a flight operations manager, accountable manager, as well as doing just everything. I was more like the dog's body, really. And after that, I flew to Malaysia. My freelancing work on the Bravos sort of led me to my job in Malaysia, where I worked for 4 years for an palm oil company. Flying all over Asia, but we also flew some of the Royals at times, which was fantastic for me and a great opportunity there. But my journey around Southeast Asia was one of the best flying moments in my career because you got to see various cultures, traditions. So that's basically my situation. On the other side of me, I do have my healing and work that I do from aromatherapy and Reiki and Sujok. So those are all the various things that I've been doing.
Amazing. And we'll get to the benefits of having multiple strings to your bows, which you will have learned from working in the airport, doing all those different tasks and jobs over there. But let's talk a little bit about the 99. So some people, when I introduced it, they may have said, 99s, what's the 99s? Or I've heard about that somewhere. I'm trying to understand what it is. So it's really exciting actually what it is, but please, can you give us an overview of what the 99s are and what the mission of the 99s is?
Yes, so I'm the governor and founder, like you said, of the African Section 99s, which is a subsection to the International 99s Women Pilots Organization. It was started in 1929 by Amelia Earhart. And the reason why it's called 99s is she invited 117 women pilots at the time in 1929, and only 99 turned up for the meeting. So that's where the name 99s comes from. But we are 6,000 members in 44 countries worldwide. And since we started the African section, we have 36 members in 18 countries. And we're hoping to have more female pilots, anyone out there that's listening, to join us and be part of this organization. It's the first and only organization that was started in 1929. So they've been going a very, very long time. And our mission basically is to promote education through aviation through education, and basically just trying to get more youth involved in the aviation industry and more females into the aviation industry.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a really noble cause and a great cause, that something that we we want to support as well. And it's been a big challenge over the last few months, of course. You know, we do a lot of outreach work, a lot of work with partners in Africa as well, and we've been talking for a long time about how aviation is such a great industry to get into, because of course it's just something that's growing, and of course this this global pandemic has obviously had an impact, and that's why today talking about what we're talking about is just so prevalent, because I'm sure it's such a big deal for so many of the pilots out there. So one of the things that we, as I alluded to at the beginning, that we wanted to discuss on the podcast today is pilot mental health. So how big an issue is it within the pilot community?
Well, mental health has become a serious issue, and I'm glad we are having this discussion. And if you remember, going back some years ago, in 2015, German Wings co-pilots committed suicide along with all the other passengers on board. And from that time, they did a survey, and basically they found, you know, the results were quite shocking, that 1 in 8 pilots, airline pilots, have depression. So it is something that needs to be discussed, and especially now in the challenging times that we're going through and facing. So many pilots have all their lives never ever expected to be made redundant or be in the situations they are. A lot have worked their entire lives for retirement. So some have never even decided or thought about having a backup career. And so many are finding themselves in situations where do we go from here? What happens next? And there's that many pilots now who have been made redundant. So there's so many people out there, and there's not enough jobs to go around. So it's quite a, you know, big topic, and a topic that really needs to be discussed. And it was also happening way before COVID started. So depression is not just, you know, I feel blue, I feel in the dumps, that sort of thing. You have all the symptoms of feeling lethargic, loss of energy, loss of interest in your activities. So many have depression due to sleep patterns. Sometimes they're working long hours. The hours can vary a lot, especially if they're doing simulator work like the training captains. Depends on when the slot is available in the simulator. So, you know, you have all the inability to think, the irritability, the physical symptoms, the main 3 that they always say, and they found is very common in pilots who suffer depression, is backache, stomachache, and headaches. So those are the 3 that really do play a big role in terms of, you know, some of the symptoms. But a lot of other factors have played a part in pilots. Some of them who suffer loneliness and have had long-term loneliness or uncaring relationships, unemployment, especially now in the situation that we're at. So these are some of the issues that, you know, a lot of the pilots are facing today.
Were you surprised by the findings? Because of course this study, it was conducted by Harvard. You've shared it with me. I've had a read. I'm sure the audience will be able to give them a link to it as well. But this was done pre-COVID, obviously. So were you surprised by the 1 in 8 figure? Did that shock you, or were you sort of like, oh, this kind of confirmed what I already thought?
I was surprised. I never thought about it until only after reading that, and then doing a bit more research into mindfulness about pilots and trying to figure out how many are really depressed. Because even in that research, they say that it's not everybody did do the research or did the surveys, and not a lot of pilots do admit that they have depression. So because, you know, in the medical fields, when you go for your medicals as a pilot, you have to self-diagnose or admit it to the CA doctors. So a lot of pilots don't, because they're so scared to that they might have their licenses suspended, and it kind of, you know, puts their career at a halt. So a lot of the times people don't really admit to it. But I am quite surprised at the results. But when you sit back and you analyze it all and you go through it, you don't actually become surprised. Initially, it's a shock, but then after that, when you do look at the lifestyle of pilots and the situations that they go through, it all makes sense. And in the aviation side, speaking from a pilot point of view, when you start out, you're always looking forward to something. You gain your commercial license, then you're looking at now working for an airline or whatever your ambition is to corporate. You achieve that, and then you're always having goals to achieve the next goal. And once you achieve captaincy, you've reached the pinnacle, and there's no more goals really to look after that. So you can reach that at a very young age. Some pilots become captains when they're 25, 30, and then what next? So they become TREs, and it's quite fun in the beginning because now you're a TRE, and it's great. You're passing on that knowledge to other pilots and doing simulated training. But after a few months, it becomes really tiresome because you're doing the late nights, the late night shifts, and then it's the same routine. You're not flying anymore. Now you're in a simulator in a box. So it becomes the norm and the routine for them. And again, there's no more to look forward to after that. So you reach your goals quite quickly. And after that, there's nothing else. And I think that also then leads to the depression for pilots. So, but it is something that I was surprised initially, and I think really needs to be addressed, and a lot needs to be talked about in terms of how do we help pilots going forward, and what can be done for them.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really important point, and I'm going to ask you about how to address these issues and who should be addressing these issues. But of course, the thing that you said there about the fact that a pilot wouldn't want to admit that they're struggling because they think this could impact negatively on their progression, or put a kind of a warning sign against their name, because they obviously want to be seen as, no, I'm absolutely fine, give me the best role, I don't want anything to be an impediment. And as soon as you plant that little seed of doubt, it causes a bit of an issue. As somebody who's not a pilot but obviously flies a lot, yeah, it's quite worrying to think the person at the helm of in the flight deck there may well be somebody. And there's varying levels of depression. I think we have to realize this as well, that not what happened with German Wings in 2015 is a very extreme example, but it's very important that we talk about this so that sort of thing doesn't happen again, and those warning signs are kind of found early. So my question, just to go back to it then, is who can address these issues, and how can we address these issues, and how can we progress this and make it so it's not such a that doesn't have the stigma with it?
Well, it usually has to start with the authorities, the civil aviation, the FAA, EASA, and all the aviation medical doctors. I do know that they do have in place certain levels of degrees, like we said, and you mentioned about the different levels of depression, and they do have something in place where they try and help the pilots. But like I said, pilots are scared to say that even if they've got just the beginning stages of depression, they're very scared to mention to the medical doctors. And I think aviation doctors need to be a little bit more, address the problem a little more sensitively towards the pilots and help them out as well, because sometimes the first thing they want to do is report them to the Civil Aviation Authority, and it's not necessary because it can be dealt with prior to being reported. And depression can be controlled and it can be treated, and it eventually does go away, but if it's caught early. So the most important thing is catching it early. But again, it's the authorities who would really need to be addressing this, the civil aviation authorities, the FAA, EASA, all the big main organizations that are looking after the pilots' licenses and well-being and health. And one of the things I would suggest, just like they run safety seminars to start running seminars on mindfulness and helping the pilots. That way, it's, you know, spreading a bit more knowledge. That would really help. And it leads me to one of the examples about NASA, where they've been doing this in 2012, because they started bringing in meditation into their research center at Langley for their staff, their astronauts, as well as their researchers. Because the last thing you want is someone out of space having an issue up there. And so basically, they've also said that they found that meditation helps a lot. You know, it improves your health, your strengthening your immune system, it reduces stress, promotes emotional health, and enhances your self-awareness. And there's so many other benefits to it. But one of the biggest things is with medication come side effects. And that's why NASA has now started doing a lot of research into this, because through other forms of holistic approaches, you wouldn't really have those side effects when you're taking medication. So it's important that, yeah, they start addressing it and probably running safety seminars and alongside mindfulness and aviation.
So meditation, not medication, would be your
meditation, not medication.
It's good. It's good. I mean, it's something that I know a lot of people now. It's become something people talk about a lot more, about practicing meditation. There's so many different ways of doing it, and so many different. You know, ultimately, it's a way of sort of switching off a little bit and tapping into something new. But when I read the sort of research that you're alluding to, you know, it says meditation, it can improve the actual size of your brain and the ability to do things and your decision-making process, all these things that you've said. So I think I better get off and do a session later on today. I think it's probably a good idea. But just on that point, are there any airlines that you know of that offer this to their pilots at the moment? Or is this just something that you think, you know, they should be doing, or do you not know?
I haven't really seen anything with airlines actually doing this. And I'm hoping, if they are listening, to please implement it. I'll be happy to help. And we, as the African Section 99s, have been running small meditation circles on Zoom. It's not the same. I'm a physical person. I like to be in groups, and actually you benefit more, especially when you have mass energy and people around, so you feel it more. But it still is beneficial through Zoom. And I know a lot of the big people like Deepak Chopra and all these big people who are in mindfulness and who do meditation, they're all doing sessions on Zoom to help humanity right now, because it's needed more than ever, not just as pilots, but just people in general. And because it's not just the aviation industry that's affected, it's like every economy and industry. So it's a knock-on effect. But I don't really know of many airlines that are doing this at the moment. People are slowly talking about mindfulness, but they're not really addressing doing meditation or other actual forms to help pilots with depression and various other ailments that they're suffering. So I hope that they are listening and they will hear this and try to implement it.
but I think the point you're making as well is this is the prevention rather than the cure. So if you're doing this, you're much less likely to get it in the first place. You know, there are so many apps out there and different programs you can sign up to that offer meditation on demand as you go, and it will teach you how to do it. And they're not a huge investment. So maybe, like you say, the airlines sort of saying in their welcome pack to new pilots, here you go, here's a subscription to X, Y, and Z, or we're going to run these group sessions, because everybody likes to do these things in slightly different ways. But yeah, the point you made, and of course the conversation today was sparked by the conversation we had about the report, about the study for pilot mental health. But we know that mental health is going to be impacted already as a result of the pandemic, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, because of course the effects of this are going to be felt for a long time to come. So as we said at the beginning, you know, anybody who is struggling out there, please do seek professional help, and you know, share your stories with somebody else, talk about it as well. I think is very important. It's just that needs to be encouraged and not be seen as something that is potentially an impediment or a negative, because otherwise you get trapped in this vicious cycle where it just gets worse because you feel you can't talk about it. So just moving on then, I wanted to talk to you, obviously we mentioned it earlier, about the next generation. And I want to get from you, as somebody who's been through this process and done lots of different things within the industry, what's your advice for those people listening now? We have a lot of young listeners from around Africa and around the world. What's your advice for those aspiring pilots that who look at an industry now and think, oh my goodness, is this the industry for me? Because of the way it's been impacted by the pandemic, is demand going to return? Are there ever going to be any jobs? These people may already be very deep into investment, or they may be considering it. How should they feel about this? And what advice have you got for them?
Well, what I say to them right now is always have a backup career. It's going to take maybe 2-3 years, maybe a little bit longer, for the aviation industry to recover. And there's a lot of jobless pilots out there who've got a lot more hours than you have, who are all experienced pilots who are also looking for those jobs. So right now, I would suggest that you have a backup career, because you never know when it comes handy, when you're going to need it. You may lose your medical license at some point throughout your training or after. And I was very lucky when I was young. My parents insisted that I had a backup career first, an alternate to aviation, because they said, what if you ever lose your medical? And I never thought about it at that time. And when you're young, you're like, Mom, Dad, I just want to fly. I don't want to think about other things, and they did make me do various things. So I always have a lot of other things to fall back on, which I'm very lucky. But like I said earlier, a lot of other pilots never ever thought or dreamed of that, because first of all, the financial investment in becoming a pilot, you spend about 100,000 to 150,000 pounds. It's a lot of money. And then at the end of it, you're still looking for a job. It's not like other careers where you go into a job and you start as a trainee, and it takes time to get your foot in the door. And many student pilots out there right now have self-funded their training, and some of them were told to leave simulator training sessions and go back home because the airlines are not in the position to take them right now. So a lot of them have these massive loans and they've got no jobs. How are they going to pay for these loans? So these are things that they really need to consider and think about. And I would say to them, if you're passionate now and you still have the dream of being a pilot, it's not going to go if you're young and you have age on your side. You can always do it later, but for now, concentrate on having a backup profession, because you never know when you're going to need it. So that would be my advice to them right now.
Yeah, sound advice, and something I would echo. I mean, of course, when you're trained to be a pilot, you're learning lots of other skills, mathematical skills, engineering skills, decision-making processes, the ability to follow instruction or to have initiative, whatever it may be.
Yes.
And those things are very transferable skills to other industries. But yes, a lot of people obviously are caught out because you're told as well to be in this kind of tunnel. This is the goal. You just do this. That you dedicate your life to that. But no, I think that's fantastic advice. So thanks for sharing that with us. And before you go, the very, very final question that I wanted to ask you today is, what do you love the most about aviation?
Just being able to be free in the sky, and one of the biggest things that it's given me is the freedom and peace of mind when I'm flying, because you forget about everything down below. But the connections you make, it's such a small world, and the friends you make, the people you come across, it's like a small little family. So you do have a wonderful family in the aviation industry as well. So it's not, even if you're not flying, there's so many other roles. There's flight operations, there's engineering, there's aeromedicine, there's air traffic control, and all those people come together and still be part of your family. And that's what's wonderful about it, is it's connecting people, making friends, and also gives me the peace of mind when I'm up there.
Amazing, amazing. And yeah, before we go, if you can just give us the website or the social media where people can find out more and connect with the 99s and yourself.
Yes, our website is www.african99s999s.com, and we'll put the link at the bottom as well.
Absolutely. Right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and talking about this subject. We really do appreciate it. As I say, 125 episodes in, and it's something we haven't talked about. So I'm really glad that we are. And all that we would ask to everybody who's listening out there is that they hit the share button now, share this episode with one person in their network they think will benefit from having a listen. And don't miss another episode. You can subscribe to AviaDev Insight Africa on iTunes. You can download the app on Google Play or on the Apple Store. And the final announcement just to make for those of you listening, before we've done the event, is that we'd like to invite you for the first virtual event for aviation tourism and hospitality, which is called Africa Tomorrow. It takes place on the 21st of July. You can register for free if you're an African or an African-based business at www.africa-tomorrow.com. We've got some amazing panels lined up for you. As I say, it's completely free. You can join from your home or wherever you've got a good internet connection. There'll be one-to-one meetings, there'll be networking, there will be panels, and we're looking forward to seeing you all there. So thanks again, Ivana, and we will no doubt meet in person very soon, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
My pleasure.